Lucifer doesn't have to be a demon to be a tragedy. The deepest fall does not come from the lowest place. It comes from nearest to the throne. Keep me from pride that knows how to sing hymns. Lucifer is not Satan, and hell is not his throne. The first time I heard that, I thought it was heresy. But as I turned through every page of scripture, every line of forgotten ancient texts, I realized we have known far too little about the one who once stood closest to the light. A being crafted from gemstones and fire, an angel who once walked among the fiery stones, a place so sacred that no ordinary angel dared set foot there. His voice once harmonized with the chorus of heaven, and the light that shone from him wasn't reflected, it came from within. Welcome to Prayer Station. He didn't carry a sword, he had no horns, no serpent tail, he bore light, and that light was a gift until he decided to make it a weapon. In a dream I saw an angel fall like a meteor, no screams, no blood, only light igniting. Only silence echoed through heaven when one so dearly loved chose betrayal. We think Lucifer is Satan, we think hell is his throne, we assume he was cast down in a blazing instant. But no, the truth, it is quieter, subtler, and far more terrifying. If what you know is only part of the truth, then the rest might leave you speechless. Walk with me into the journey of the 5 layers of revelation, where light mutates and darkness wears the robe of an angel. Because there are stories not found in catechism books, not preached from church pulpits, yet still echo deep within every soul. The story of Lucifer is not just about him, it is a warning to those who think they shine. But wait. Before we speak of the fall, before thunder, fire, and the abyss of eternity, do you know who Lucifer is? What you've believed since childhood might be something reshaped over centuries. A distorted truth, a misapplied name, an angel wrongly accused, or not in the way you imagined. Because if we got it wrong from the very name, then maybe the whole story has been off track from the very first moment. And from that very confusion, a cosmic play was set in motion, and humanity became unsuspecting spectators. Are you ready? Step into the first mystery of the one once called the Light Bearer. Lucifer is not Satan, and that's only the beginning. We grew up with a belief set in stone. Lucifer is Satan, a fallen angel cast out of heaven, turned into a demon. He is eternal darkness, the ancient enemy, the source of all evil in this world. But what if I told you that image was never actually written in the Bible? Not the way you were taught, not like the paintings, the sermons, or the Hollywood movies portrayed it. Lucifer, that powerful and haunting name, actually doesn't belong to Satan. Not an angel, not a demon, not a theological figure with horns and fire. Lucifer is simply an image, a symbol, an ancient metaphor for the morning light. The first ray after the night, a dawn radiant, proud and dazzling, and tragically, because of that radiance, a different story was placed upon it. They said he once stood at the highest place. He once said, "I will ascend to the heavens, I will set my throne above the clouds." Then he fell from glory, fell from the light, fell from a position. But all those words then, they weren't about an actual angel. They were metaphors, poetry, and sarcasm aimed at a prideful king of old. A man who lifted himself like a god and was brought low to the dust. We don't know who he was, But over time, that image was stripped from its context, combined with fragments of legend, and turned into the portrait of a rebellious angel. From poetry to myth, from symbol to doctrine, from metaphor to dogma. And so the name Lucifer was buried beneath layers of interpretation and fear. A name once used to describe light, now the emblem of darkness. A light forgotten, a name misunderstood, and a truth distorted. But if that is true, if from the very first name we were mistaken, what does that mean for the rest? Have you ever considered that Lucifer was never an angel? That he was never cast from heaven for rebellion? That everything we believe is him might be a shadow created by man to explain what we didn't understand? And if so, then who is Satan? Who is the one behind the darkness? Who is the one who truly deceived the nations? Or perhaps the name Lucifer is just a mirror reflecting the human heart, a light that was given but claimed for oneself. You see, Lucifer doesn't have to be a demon to be a tragedy. He can be a symbol of pride disguised as light, greatness misused, radiance without humility. And if Lucifer once was light, then his betrayal didn't come from darkness, but from refusing to shine for the right purpose. He wanted to keep the glory, to sit upon the light, to be admired for the brightness while forgetting the one who created it. And that is the spirit of the fall. No screaming, no revolt, just one desire, to become like God, without God. Today that spirit still lingers, in the church, on the pulpit, in the hearts of those given light, but they use it to build kingdoms for themselves. That is a twisted light, an independent light, a light no longer belonging to heaven. And if that is true, then Lucifer is not just a character in myth. He is a living warning of what happens when light stops submitting. If light can betray, then are you certain the light you carry is real? And if the name Lucifer is just a shell, a symbol misassigned, then where did the truth fall? Who was the first to fall? And why is that cataclysmic event never clearly shown at the beginning of the human story? The answer will open another gate, a deeper layer, where darkness didn't begin with forbidden fruit, but with a light that refused to bow. If you ask a child in church, where did sin begin? They'll say, with the forbidden fruit. If you ask an adult, who deceived Eve? They'll answer, Lucifer. We've grown far too familiar with that picture, a lush green garden, a tree of forbidden fruit, a man, a woman, and a talking snake. Then the story continues automatically. That snake was Lucifer, the one who fell from heaven, disguising himself as a creature to destroy mankind. It sounds so familiar. We never stop to ask, but today pause for a moment and ask honestly. Was it Lucifer who appeared in the Garden of Eden? Was that truly the beginning of the first rebellion? Or was it all just a simplified, easy-to-tell version far from revelation? Because if you return to the ancient text, back to the true beginning of Genesis, you won't find a single mention of the name Lucifer. Nowhere does it say the serpent was a banished angel. There's no line calling it Satan. No image showing this being walking among the stars, then cast down to the dust. It's simply called the serpent. No identity, no origin, no spiritual context, no divine power. A creature that could speak, could tempt, but was never assigned any heavenly rank. So why have we always believed it was Lucifer? Why, for thousands of years, from medieval paintings to modern films, do we still see that serpent with glowing red eyes and broken wings? The answer lies not just in interpretation, but in the deepest need of the human heart. We always need someone to blame. because it's hard to accept that. A woman listened to a mere creature. A man silently watched the forbidden fruit handed to him. And then both chose to rebel against God. But what if Lucifer wasn't there? What if he didn't whisper from the bushes? What if no fallen light ever entered that garden? Then where did the first fall truly begin? The answer takes us beyond the boundaries of time, beyond the Garden of Eden, beyond dust, shapes, trees, and humans, back to before the heavens and earth were formed, before the wind blew, before grass grew, before humans called each other by name. There was only light, only heavenly beings, and the glorious presence of God. There, a being was created not from dust, but from precious stones and fire. He didn't walk. He moved through the heavens like a stream of holy electricity. He didn't speak with a mouth. He sang with his soul, blending into the echoes of the heavenly choir. He didn't demand a throne, but every step, every note, every desire silently leaned toward it. No one knows the exact moment sin first formed within his soul. We only know. He didn't shout, "I will rise against the Creator." He only whispered one thing: "I will be like him." No fruit, no tree, no woman, just light, aware of its brightness, wanting to draw admiration to itself forever. Just glory, once reflected toward the Most High, now held back like a mirror admiring itself. That was the first sin. No shape, no sound, no words, just light falling. And that fall didn't happen in the Garden of Eden. It happened in heaven, not among bushes and serpent shadows, but among heavenly realms, angelic songs, and the radiance near the throne of glory, where an anointed soul turned away in silence. We got the place wrong. We wrote down the wrong name. And perhaps the saddest part is, we turned a dreadful sacred betrayal into a children's parable. An apple, a snake, a gullible woman. But in truth, that was not the beginning of sin. It was merely the second appearance on a new stage with new players. So if the fall didn't begin with the forbidden fruit, if Lucifer never slithered through Eden's bushes like we always thought, then where was he before he fell? What was he standing on when light still cloaked his body like a sacred robe? And who heard his voice before it turned venomous? You see, we often picture sin as something vile, an obvious act, a loud rebellion, but some revolts make no sound. No pounding on tables, no shouting in defiance, just a gaze that admired itself for too long. Just a compliment from another angel, kept in the heart, never redirected to the throne, just a worship melody, where for the first time he sang to be heard. He wasn't on earth, he wasn't hiding, he wasn't lurking in the shadows, he stood in the light, in the holiest place, in a position closer to the throne of God than any other angel. He didn't fall from the bushes, he fell from the peak of glory, from the very center of holiness, from the place where songs were raised not to perform but to worship. And that was the deeper tragedy. He didn't rebel with swords, he didn't declare war, he simply began singing a song where he was the subject. Before he fell, he was music. He was the vibration between heavenly realms, the harmony of gemstones and sacred fire. His song wasn't jarring, it was hauntingly beautiful. But then, he used that song to draw eyes to himself, no longer just reflecting glory, but wanting to keep the glory. And right there, the light began to fracture, not from a low place, but from the highest, not from darkness, but from the midst of heaven. He wasn't cast out for rebellion, he fell for ceasing to obey. And that fall wasn't as explosive as we thought. It began with one note off key. Are you ready? Because the next part will take you to a place few dare to look straight into, where Lucifer wasn't just an angel, but the anointed one appointed to guard right beside the holy throne. And from there he fell. Lucifer was not an ordinary angel. He did not stand on the outer courts of heaven like the guardians. He did not soar afar in the third heaven. He wasn't just given light. He was anointed to guard the very presence of God. He was a covering cherub, one of the beings who stood beside the throne of glory where the Spirit of God blazed without ceasing. He didn't look at God from afar. He lived within the holy fire, within the atmosphere of absolute holiness. Every step he took was the sound of trembling gemstones. Every movement was a stream of light reflecting off layers of sapphire, onyx, and emerald embedded in his heavenly robe. No one stood closer to him. No one was more honored. No one was adorned with more glory than he was. And it was from that highest place that the first sin was born. Sin did not begin in a sinful place. It began near the holy throne, from the most radiant glory, from inside the light itself. Lucifer was created as a living symphony, not just an angel, but a sacred instrument. Every flute pipe, every harp string, every jeweled inlay of his being released music. He didn't need to sing. He was the song, and that song once meant to glorify God. One day, one began to shift its rhythm. A single note held just a little longer. A word of praise lifted, but instead of rising to heaven, echoed back toward him. No one noticed at first, because he was still praising. He was still standing in holiness, still singing, shining, circling the throne. But deep inside, something had changed. A strange desire stirred within his soul, not to destroy heaven, but to hold heaven's gaze. Not to reject him, but to become like him. Not to hate the light, but to claim himself as the source of light. And that is the greatest tragedy. Not light against darkness, but light betraying the one who lit it. Lucifer was not deceived. No one tempted him. No serpent whispered in his ear. He was the first to sin without anyone enticing him to do it. And his sin is not an external act, but an inner thought of pride, a flash of lightning across the sky of glory that said, I can become like him. He didn't fall because he stumbled. He fell because he lifted himself. And when you understand that, you'll realize the deepest fall does not come from the lowest place. It comes from the nearest to the throne. The most dangerous sin is not the sin of those cast out from the temple, but the sin of one who walked among the holy fire. We often think hell is a place far from the light, but in truth, hell was first born in the heart of a being who lived in the light and rejected humility. And when he fell, heaven was silent, not because it didn't care, but because that fall had begun long ago. He fell like lightning, not because he was pushed, but because he no longer wanted to stand beneath the one seated on the throne. But Lucifer's fall was not just the fall of a single soul. It was a silent explosion in the invisible world, shaking the order of the heavens. Because when he fell, he did not fall alone. 1/3 of the angels, those who once flew in the light, once sang in glory, chose to follow that silent call. There was no bloodshed, there were no screams, only a quiet agreement that light could determine its destiny. And so, 1/3 of the light fell from the sky. From that moment on, the divine order was broken. A fracture invisible to the human eye began spreading across the unseen realm. And it was right there, before man was ever created, before the forbidden fruit was ever plucked. The war had begun, but not a war of swords and spears, a rebellion in the spirit realm, a silent war, yet one that shook the very foundations of the universe. Have you ever wondered why this world carries fractures deep within it? Why does evil appear too early, too deep, too incomprehensible? Maybe it wasn't something that came later, but the inheritance of a fall that happened before history began. And the next part will open that door, where light once sang, now echoes with rebellion, where angels once covered the glory, now choose to follow one who no longer obeys. And in that place, 1/3 of heaven disappeared from the skies. Are you ready? Because we haven't yet stepped into hell. We are still standing amid heaven. At the moment it broke, Lucifer's fall did not happen in a single moment. It was a silent process, a misaligned stream of thought spreading like a crack in the wall of holiness. And the most terrifying part is, he did not fall alone. Scripture records, 1/3 of the angels were swept along, not by force, not by loud persuasion, but by a quiet aura, carrying a thirst for power. He did not call for war. He planted ideas. An idea seemingly harmless, yet enough to pull celestial beings into a blind spiral. Maybe I too could become something more. In an invisible realm, where there are no languages, no walls, no weapons, the agreement happened in silence. A spiritual misalignment, a rebellion without blood, without smoke, without whips, but devastating to the soul. 1/3 of the light severed itself from the source. 1/3 of the angels abandoned their place by the throne to follow one who no longer looked upward. 1/3 of the voices ceased harmonizing with heaven and began humming their tune. That rebellion did not begin with a shout, "We rise against the Creator." It began with a silent nod, a deep inner agreement. I feel the same as you. No need to forge weapons, just disrupt the order. No need to scream freedom, just withdraw from obedience. And then the first spiritual earthquake in the history of the universe took place. 1/3 of the light fell. The heavens once seemed still, but now the heavenly realm was unbalanced. The throne remained firm. The one who sits upon it still radiates glory. But the host around the throne was no longer whole. This was not just a loss. This was the first separation among beings created to dwell together in eternity. 1/3 of heaven, once singing together, soaring together, ministering together, now fell like stars in the night. No flames erupted, no swords came crashing down. Only a divine gravity began to pull down those who no longer reached upward. And the most dreadful part is, they did not disappear, they still exist, but no longer as what they were created to be. From angels to rebellious spirits, from servants of glory to sowers of chaos, from pure songs to dark curses echoing through the unseen realm. Have you ever heard a song that's distorted off-key and screamed in despair? Imagine 1/3 of heaven's harmony, shattering. That was a fall humanity had never heard, but the universe has never forgotten. And those fallen beings would later step into human history, not as angels, but as tempters, as strange wind gods, as inhabitants of darkness. We have not seen all that has fallen from the skies. We only see the fractures left behind in this world. Fractures in ancient civilizations, fractures in the human mind, fractures in sleep, in the spirit realm, in our very spiritual lives. That rebellion did not die. It still simmers in the invisible realm, among us, around us, and sometimes within us. That rebellion dragged 1/3 of the light down from the heavens. But what's more terrifying is they did not vanish. They weren't burned. They weren't locked away. They weren't cast into the abyss as we once believed. They are still there, in the spiritual realm, hidden among layers of space that human eyes cannot perceive. And their leader, the one who once fell from the peak of glory, does not sit on a throne of fire, nor is he chained in a deep pit, but is walking between dimensions. Because there is a truth that has been distorted through generations. Lucifer does not rule hell. He has never sat on any throne in the underworld. And if that leaves you stunned, you need to hear what comes next, because we have treated a fallen one as if he were a king. There is an image that has been drawn and redrawn in our minds for generations. Lucifer, the supreme king of hell, sitting on a throne of fire, commanding demons, holding power over life and death in the deep realm where the flames never cease. A tyrant of the underworld, ruling the kingdom of darkness as if it were his rightful throne. But that is one of the most beautiful lies he wants us to believe. Because the truth is, he does not rule there. He sits on no throne at all. And he has never been cast into the eternal lake of fire. The book of Job throws open the doors of the spiritual realm and lets us see a shocking thing. Satan still walks about. He is not imprisoned, not burned, not locked up in a place called hell. When the angels appeared before the Lord, he was also there, and when asked, he calmly replied, "I roam throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." No fear, no chains, no exile. He is still allowed to be present even after the fall. He is not in the abyss. He is not being burned by fire. He is moving within the invisible realm, walking between light and darkness, sowing doubt and temptation within permitted boundaries. And this very truth has shattered countless distorted imaginations. Hell is not his throne. Hell is the final judgment. Revelation makes it clear. On the last day, the ancient dragon, which is the devil, will be thrown into the eternal lake of fire, the place of unending punishment. What does that mean? It means he's not there yet. He hasn't been burned. Hell is not the domain he rules. It's the place he's trying to escape. We imagine him as a regal lord receiving reverence from demons, but in reality, he's just a defeated spirit awaiting his final sentence. So why do we exalt him? Why do paintings, songs, and cultural notions crown him as the king of hell? Because that's exactly what he wants. Because once again, he doesn't need real power, then he just needs you to believe he has it. And if you believe, then your fear will build a throne for him. A throne made of imagination, not truth. Hell is the place he fears most. It is the appointed judgment. It is the eternal wrath waiting for him. But he made us think it's his castle. And that's the final deception. He turned the sentence into a throne in humanity's eyes. The traitor is being praised as a lord because we believed in a darkness that could sing hymns. We forgot he once stood in the light. We forgot he was once anointed to cover the glory. We forgot he lost it all. And the most painful thing is, we gave back to him what he had lost, the dominion over the human mind. But the truth remains undeniable. He is not on a throne. He is not sitting in hell. He is still wandering the spirit realm, waiting for the appointed time. We have not yet entered the final battle, but we're no longer at the beginning, because the one who fell is still allowed to operate. And this is the moment we must face a far more important question. Is the story of Lucifer really about him? Or is it reflecting something within us? Because maybe rebellion was never just about an angel, but a mirrored shadow in every soul each time we want to sit on our throne. And if you think Lucifer has fallen far from us, wait until you see where he is right now. I used to think Lucifer was far from me, a fallen being in another dimension in a battle I had nothing to do with. But then I realized that first sin wasn't a sword, nor a spectacular fall. It was a gaze that kept the glory for itself. I used to see him as a rebel, but now I see myself in the lights that haven't fully surrendered. The desire to be seen, to be recognized, to be praised, more than to obey. I used to think I was different from him, until I saw myself longing to shine, but not wanting to bow, wanting to be like him, but not wanting to need him. And that's when I understood Lucifer didn't just fall from heaven, he fell into the heart of anyone who's ever sung, but sang for themselves, ever served, but longed for credit, ever gave light, but wanted eyes to turn toward them. False light still dazzles, and the darkness that sings hymns sometimes stands right on the pulpit. No one sees the fall while it still echoes like worship. But God sees, and my heart began to fear. I tremble when I think of the moments I no longer obeyed, when the light I carried no longer pointed to him, when I began to build a little throne right in the middle of the sacred things I did. Lucifer is not just an old story. He is the mirror reflecting each of us when light no longer bows before true glory. I don't want to be the one who falls without a sound. I don't want to become a song out of tune, and even while I'm praising. And if you find yourself somewhere in this story too, then maybe we need to bow right now, before the light we carry on becomes the very evidence against us. Because if rebellion can hide itself in light, then maybe the scariest thing isn't the one who fell, but the souls that are falling and still don't realize they're falling. Layers of light have been torn apart. Fragments of glory have been misused. Twisted truths have built a story that even the church dares not fully preach. And if you've come this far with me, if you've seen the first cracks in heaven, if you've realized that light can be betrayed, even in the heart of man, now it's time to look again, layer by layer, mystery by mystery, each mask that's fallen from false glory, so you can be ready to enter the final battle, not with Lucifer, but with the unsurrendered light within your soul. Are you ready? We're about to revisit every layer of revelation and see more clearly than ever before. The fall was never just about one angel. We've journeyed through the 5 deepest layers of one of the most distorted stories in spiritual history. Layer 1 opened with a shocking truth. Lucifer is not Satan. That name was originally just a poetic metaphor in ancient literature, not the name of a rebellious angel. And if we've misunderstood from the very name, then every definition of darkness began from a flawed foundation. Layer 2 revisited the true origin of the fall. It wasn't the forbidden fruit, not the garden. No talking serpent with broken wings. Rebellion began in heaven, among the light, among the songs of angels. A spirit who knew it was shining and didn't want that light to return to the one who gave it. Layer 3 brought us the peak of the glory he once held. Not the outskirts of heaven, but right beside the throne, where no one stood closer to God. Lucifer wasn't just an angel, he was a living instrument, a song that could be heard without a mouth. And the fall didn't begin with defiance, but with a melody that shifted its worship away from the source. Layer 4 told of the first spiritual quake. He didn't fall alone. 1/3 of the heavenly realm nodded in silent agreement. There was no war, no blood, just a quiet withdrawal from obedience. just light, refusing to bow. And layer 5, the final one, exposed the greatest deception. Lucifer does not reign over hell. He has never sat on any throne. He still wanders through the realms of the spirit, sowing doubt and deceit, but not yet burned, not yet imprisoned. And the tragedy is, we have exalted him as king, built thrones for him from fear and centuries of misbelief, from light to betrayal, from the throne near God to the depths of deviation, from a song of glory to a melody of pride, from heaven to a place where no one even knows what to call him. 5 layers, 5 mirrors, 5 wake-up calls for souls who once thought they were standing firm in the light. But maybe the story of Lucifer was never just about him. It's about a truth groaning deep within humanity, a divine invitation ringing out from the layers of heaven. But if everything you've just heard wasn't just to inform, but to awaken, then it's time for you to step out of the silence. Because this is not just the story of Lucifer, but a call meant for you right now. Thank you for staying with us until now. You know by now that the story of Lucifer is not just about a fallen angel. It's about the most subtle form of darkness, when light no longer walks in humility, when glory no longer points back to the Most High, and when we, those who believe we're walking in the light, begin building thrones for ourselves within the temple of God. We've peeled away the layers of mythology. We've revisited every layer of revelation. And today, we are no longer the same as when we began. If something inside you was stirred, leave a comment. Because who knows, your words may become the awakening call for another soul. If you've realized you once misunderstood the truth, share this video with someone else, because truth doesn't set us free if we keep it to ourselves. And if you're ready to keep going, hit follow on Prayer Station today. We will continue to open new doors where light and darkness collide, where the Word of God has never been preached from a pulpit, yet still echoes in the depths of the soul. Share, comment, follow. Because light multiplies when it's no longer hidden. Lord, if there's any place in me where I'm keeping the light for myself, please shine on it. If there's any melody in my soul that's rising for my own sake, please silence it. I don't want to become another Lucifer. I want to return to being your song. Keep me from the pride that knows how to sing hymns, and place me back where I belong, under the light, not as the source of it. Amen.